Hello and welcome to the Gaggle War Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, today is July the 4th. So, to our American listeners, to American members of Locals Board, congratulations on the birthday of your country. And speaking of July the 4th, on Monday, at the end point of this July the 4th weekend, Bibi Netanyahu will be showing up in the White House for his visit. Third visit. Most leaders
In
have,
this term.
yeah, mostly, some of the European leaders, Schmerz and Macron and Starmer, they only got one visit. This is his third visit. And on the agenda is this plan. This is the big, big Trump plan for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Yeah,
Um,
but now it's like the Trump plan. But it could turn into my plan. It was never my plan. You know,
right,
why are
right.
you putting it on me? Now, this is get used to it, everyone.
Right. Yes. I mean, yes. He's very, very good at passing the buck on to others, and but nonetheless, he now seems committed to the idea of having a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, the problem with the ceasefire in Gaza is, it can be expressed very simply. I mean, it's not actually even particularly conceptually difficult. Hamas will agree to a ceasefire, will agree to the return of the living hostages and the bodies of the dead hostages um, in exchange for a permanent ceasefire and an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Israel, however, wants the hostages back and makes clear that it will not accept any kind of a Hamas presence in Gaza. So we're back in the same situation, which is, oh, yes, of course, Israel and Trump will talk about the 60-day ceasefire. But if at the end of the 60 days, Israel relaunches, as of course it will, relaunches its onslaught on the residents of Gaza, then of course there is no ceasefire, and therefore there is no deal. There's no kind of agreement. So Hamas has been pressing Trump to issue guarantees. I'm not sure what the Trump guarantee is worth very much, but they are saying nonetheless Trump needs to guarantee that he will not allow Israel to attack Gaza as it has in the past. What do you think of these
What would
convoluted negotiations?
well, there's absolutely nothing that Trump can guarantee that's going to have any meaning. I think what's going to happen is Trump wants this wrapped up one way or another, and that's really ominous. Um, this aid program that Mossad came up with with American contractors is just an abomination, and
No,
everybody knows it.
there was the Gaza
Um,
Humanitarian Foundation or whatever it's called. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. What a term! What a term! And even you have the contractors themselves leaking to the Associated Press with their own voices and their own video of what's going on. I mean, it's like I said, an abomination. What Trump wants, and this is what makes it anonymous. He's okay. This has to come to an end, and then the Israelis. Well, we have an end game. We got to push these people out. They got to push them all out, and I think Trump will go along with it. Okay,
Yeah,
and I think that's why Netanyahu. See what Netanyahu wants is a guarantee. No one's going to give Hamas or the Palestinian people any guarantees. That's never happened before. We guarantee that you don't have a state. We'll guarantee you won't be struck. Then that never happens. What Netanyahu wants is guarantees from Trump. That once we start this, you're going to stay with me, hip to
right,
hip.
right.
Right. Big boy, Trump thinks this is like a Rocky film with one round. And then the picture's over, the movie's over. No, Netanyahu's going to go, no, 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 we're going for it's 9 rounds. We may have to go more than 9 rounds, Donald. We have agreed. Everybody read your True Social post. Thank you very much. We're in this together for the long run, and it's not about Gaza. It's about the big picture, the big picture, the greater Israel Zionist project, and it's going to be attained under Netanyahu's premiership. Now, he might say under your presidency, but we know what this is about. This isn't going to be an important meeting because if you look how Trump has responded to all of this, we won, we obliterated. My work is done. We're done. We're not going in for a war. We're not going in for a war of attrition. We're not going to have a long war, not another stupid Middle East war. He's trying to convince himself, George. He's trying to convince himself.
Right. Now, the problem with that is, of course, that Hamas isn't going to buy into that.
I
So
agree.
there's no way they're going to agree to that because they know that that's exactly what Netanyahu wants. That's why Hamas is saying that we can't have what we got in March, where you just simply walked out. We were supposed to have this three-phase deal. We just got to the first phase and then you walked out, and which is why Hamas is saying, yeah, well, we're not going to agree to a 60-day ceasefire. We're not going to hand anyone over unless Trump gives a guarantee that he will restrain Israel. Now, that's his. If Trump wants he's this whole Nobel Peace Prize and everything. If Trump and he's talking about this ceasefire in Gaza, then he's going to have to do that. Otherwise, there's not going to be a ceasefire. I mean, Hamas is not going to agree to a
Hey, but
60
George,
day
George,
ceasefire.
Israelis convinced Trump to attack Iran on its nuclear assets. Okay, I mean, I think their pervasive powers are going to be
Right,
equally
right.
applied in this case. Well, we gave them, we went in on this together. They broke the ceasefire. What can we do? And remember, in private, remember you said if they break the ceasefire, we continue. Okay, that's right, BB. You said that. We agreed to that. Come on, come on. There's nothing good going to come out of this. Nothing.
I tend to agree with you. I don't think but that means essentially there's not going to be a ceasefire. I mean, there's not
No,
going to
the
be
genocide will continue.
exactly because um, Hamas isn't going to agree to anything that will be, hey, after the 60 days we restart. No, there's no way that that's going to happen. I mean, I guess what are the factors that might lead towards the ceasefire? Well, I mean, you've got the involvement of Egypt and Qatar. Trump may think that I need to at least maintain some cordial relations. But I don't think that matters very much. Um, you have Trump. Really, I mean, for some reason, his vanity is so overwhelming that he really does think that he can be the this no. He wants that Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, it's like this, if you continue this mass slaughter, yeah, no Nobel Peace Prize for you. Um, but I think that there's just nothing. I mean, unless Netanyahu is going to do something that he hasn't been willing to do before, which is namely actually withdraw from Gaza, then I think there's going to be nothing. I think there's not going to be any kind of a deal. I mean, because essentially we've been here before, and does anyone really believe? Would anyone really believe anything that Israel promises? No. I mean,
Well,
so
I mean, George, we could get to a situation where Netanyahu agrees to withdraw the IDF but not allow any aid in. It's the same
right, but
outcome.
that has to be part. That's going to be part of any deal. The uncontrolled, unconditional release of aid into Gaza would be part of any kind of a deal,
Well,
and
they
that
can say yes. We have certain parameters and certain. Yeah, in principle, we're for it, and then
right,
we see.
right.
But because Hamas keeps stealing it, what can we do? Okay, that trope keeps coming up over and over and over. Actually, there is a counter to that, which Israeli supporters hate. If you're worried about Hamas, commandeering the aid and selling it for a profit. Well, who has money now in Gaza? I mean, I can't figure that out. Just flood the place with food, flood it, okay? Then it will be less valuable because there's such a quantity, and then people can eat, okay? So if
Right.
you're worried about that, just do the reverse. Just flood it in where there's so much food.
Right.
And of
So,
course, they don't want that to happen.
hold on. Miranda. Yep.
Okay, we're
And we're
back.
back. We're having some technical issues today. Um, well, the one aspect of it that is interesting, and we've been waiting for this for some time. Will there come a point within Israeli society that they're going to say we're just tired of this war. We can't go on. We're just sick of it. We want this to
You
come
mean the
in.
genocide?
Right. Well, all right, fine. Whatever you want to call
Well,
it.
I mean, I think it's
Okay. Well, if you
because
want to
I
call
think
it
they're
that, I mean,
different.
I'm hesitant to use that term, but if you want to use that term, then go ahead. But I mean, is there a point which
I
is
mean, after 21 months, George, I mean,
well,
really?
I don't I tend to stay away from these emotive terms. I think it's a very
That's
legal.
emotive. That's facts. That's a
Well,
fact. Right.
it's it's a legal term. It's a legal term. It goes by the Genocide Convention, and you have to go through all the definitions as to what constitutes genocide and so on. So I kind of prefer not to use those terms until there's a legal determination. But I don't
I
know if
mean,
you
was there a
so
genocide against the Armenians, against the Jews?
I haven't used that term.
Against the Jews?
Um, Well, I would think that would be the closest one could say that was the genocide. But in other cases, I think there's always the question, which was there an intent? Is there an intent to wipe out a people, wipe out of existence a people? Then you have to define which is the people, and is everything that's taking place driven by that goal of wiping out a
What else?
people.
What else can the Israelis do other than nuking them?
Well, no, but I mean, after all, they haven't wiped out the people. I mean, there's still, a very substantial
Not for
population
want
that's
of
in Gaza.
trying.
Well, okay, but that's that, not for want of trying. They could absolutely try a lot harder. They have the technical means of doing so, and they haven't done that in the West Bank. I mean, they've made life horrific. There's no question. But all I'm talking about is that legal term of
Well, okay, fine,
genocide.
but I don't think you really need a legal term. I mean, my eyes tell me something, and I'm not a lawyer, so um, for me, the term is applicable. Okay, I'm a little surprised, but anyway,
I don't know why you're surprised. I've never used the term in all this time. I've never referred to it as a genocide. Just as I didn't refer to the term genocide when people made that comment in relation to Yugoslavia. I've never used that term when people talk about
I
that.
never
In the
used it in
comment
Georgia.
of Russia, I mean, people throw around this term an awful lot without any
I
attempt
don't I don't
to
say it
use
lightly.
somehow the legal definitions as to whether it constitutes
I
genocide. And
don't use it
no
lightly.
one has made that determination. The International Court of Justice did not make any such determination. So that's
Okay.
why I hesitate. I hesitate to use it. I mean, you can use it if you want.
Yeah, but I
Um,
don't use it lightly. Okay. I like for Yugoslavia, I never used that term ever.
right. But yeah, I mean, I just don't do it. I mean, there are plenty of other terms you can use. Um, mass slaughter, mass starvation. Um,
Well, I mean, what's the issue for
that's
you? Is it intentionality? Is
well,
that
there is the intentionality and a specific intentionality. The specific intentionality that a people has to be wiped out of existence. So mass slaughter and atrocities and unimaginable cruelty, that's those those can be given. Okay, with that
well, I
none of
mean,
that
you need
demonstrated.
a you need
But
a
to say that the goal is to wipe out a people and wipe them out of existence, that's what you'd have to establish.
yeah, so you would need a court order, a court determination to go.
Well, whether it's a court determination, I think would have to, you'd have to have some more evidence that that's what they've done. I mean, if you say that in the space of 18 months or 19 months, they've wiped out, they killed, let's say, 60,000 Palestinians, 60,000 out of 2 million, that's still quite a small percentage. You're still talking about, just I don't know, I think
Well,
whatever
I don't think we
three
really
four
have any.
percent. That would it's you're still you can't really go from 3-4% to say, well, they intend to wipe out a people. And then which people are we talking about? The people of Gaza? You talk about the people of West Bank? You talk about all Palestinians? You'd have to, all of this
Well,
is
I
in
think
some ways established.
most people are that use the term are thinking in terms of Gaza specifically.
Right, but then when that's not a people, because a people is the Palestinians, the West Bank and the Gaza
Well,
constitute a single entity.
well, the
So they've
population.
only done that. They've only committed these atrocities, horrific atrocities in Gaza, which is only one part of it. They haven't done that in the West Bank.
Well, the
And again,
Palestinians of Gaza.
3-4% is simply that's not 100%. That's
Yeah,
less than
well,
25%.
that's being very careful. That's what has been read. That's what, documents proven. I think there's a lot of people still under the rubble.
Right,
And
but okay, let's.
in an environment like that, keeping the book straight seems to be a bit would be challenging to say the least. Okay, but I mean, going back to Netanyahu's trip, I mean, he wants this situation, if you just want to call it that, to come to an end because it has wrecked Israel's reputation around the world, probably forever to come. Okay, so and he wants Donald Trump to be his co-conspirator, which he is right now. Okay, he is a co-conspirator in this, and Donald Trump is coming to the realization, on one level or another, conscious or not, that he's in hip deep with this. That's exactly what Netanyahu wants.
Right. Well, then, so were you saying that he wants to end this, or he doesn't want to
Oh
end
yeah, he wants to.
Yeah.
Going back to what we were talking about, he
Right. So
wants to finish it off.
right,
Okay,
he wants to finish it up. Well,
and
if
like I said, George, I mean, if the IDF just completely withdrew and just sealed the border like it did before, then you're just going to have the population dying of starvation, dehydration, exposure. It will just. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but plenty of other people are chiming in. As of yesterday, 107 NGOs, which I'm not always a big fan of, but there seems to be a rough consensus here that critical starvation, they've reached that point. And then I mean, Chris Hedges wrote a wonderful piece about 2 weeks ago saying that the genocide is complete. I mean, now it's just the mopping up operation. If you're not going to let food in, you're not going to let fuel in, then you're just going to see a population wither and die. And that's exactly what I think the majority of Israeli society wants. One opinion poll after another. I mean, that's why when we kind of had this interruption, I mean, there's a situation with Iran, I think, is one thing, but the situation in the Gaza Strip and what's happening in the West Bank obviously are part of a bigger picture, but they can be segmented.
right. Uh, okay. Well, we at the moment, they're going to have to negotiate. I mean, the deal is going to be Netanyahu is going to come to DC. Trump is talking about the ceasefire. They're talking about the mechanics of a ceasefire. And Hamas at the moment is engaged in these negotiations. Um, the fact is that this mass starvation, Israel still has not been able to do what you said that they want to do, which is to drive all the members, all the residents of Gaza into Egypt or Jordan or something. That hasn't happened.
But
Uh,
okay, but
that
they would
hasn't
like
happened.
that to
That hasn't
happen.
happened. I mean, that's
And there, no, 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 George, because I look at this as a progression. I've said this from day one, and we've had this conversation many times. It's not for the lack of intent. The intent is there. I see it anyway. It's how to reach that goal. And you said a minute ago, a deal. What deal? This is all PR. They're not working towards a deal because every single deal is broken. Okay, it's how
all
to
right.
frame this
Right.
unbelievable human catastrophe. That's what's framing it. That's what they want to do. Get a deal? Come on.
Right,
After everything,
right. But they cannot do it. It has not worked.
they
It has
haven't
not
finished
worked.
it, but
It hasn't worked. I
okay.
mean,
Well,
it's just
George,
where you
I don't
get.
know. I don't know what you have to see.
Well,
What
first
you
of all, as I say, you would have to get a very. First of all, you'd have to drive out the residents of Gaza elsewhere. That hasn't happened. You have to then essentially, uh, you know, basically wipe out a good chunk of that 2 million, which hasn't happened. Um, and you know, Israel doesn't have the capability
Now,
of
what kind of
doing.
deal does Israel want?
Well, look, what kind of a deal Israel? Yeah, you're absolutely right. They would almost certainly want as many as people in Gaza to go away, but they don't have the strength, the will, the capability of making it happen. So all that goes on is this horrific war that has no prospect of coming to an end because they're not going to be able to drive out the residents of Gaza, and they're not going to be able to defeat Hamas. So the war just continues.
So what's the deal?
Well, I'm not saying there is going to be a deal. I think that's what I think Trump and Egypt, Qatar, and everything, all these negotiations. I think that's what they are trying to
Well, the
work
deal would
out. But
be
there are negotiations. I mean, there's no question there are negotiations, and Hamas is engaging in some negotiations. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be any kind of a deal, but nonetheless, they are.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. Hamas has to surrender. They have to leave the Gaza Strip. Um,
That's not.
uh,
That's not. Yeah, that isn't going to
Hey,
happen.
let me keep
Okay.
rolling.
Okay.
Okay. There'll be we'll work on a framework for a possible two-state solution. Come on, we've heard
No,
this
no,
for
we're
30,
not
40
talking about that. We're
years.
not talking about
30,
that.
40 years we've been hearing this.
We're not. But that's not what the current conversation isn't about. That the current
Well,
conversation.
I mean, you have the Saudis with
And again, I'm very skeptical of all of this. But nonetheless, the current conversation is Gaza, specifically Gaza.
well, George, I think really what Bibi wants to do with Trump, I think at the if we um go to the very core. His core goal is we have to get these people out.
Is
And
yes,
I need your help to get these people out. That is what a deal is, okay? Of course, the Palestinians will have no say in it,
right.
okay?
But
But
yeah,
I mean, but Netanyahu is going to say, we don't deal with terrorists. You understand me, Mr. President. We don't deal with terrorists. So we have to get rid of the terrorists, and unfortunately, we have to get rid of the population because all of the population are terrorists. Okay, Trump might go along with
no,
that. Okay,
he's not going to
now
go.
I don't. George,
He's not going to go along with it. He can't.
he went to war with Iran.
Yeah,
Okay,
a very
so
yeah, 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 yeah.
give me,
And you can
let this
see,
be a bit elastic, okay?
right.
What they think that's what, first of all, he wants to keep Trump on board. It's very important. Netanyahu is a very, very smart political operator. He sees how Trump can vacillate back and forth. I mean, with a very narrow margin, go this way and this way to keep his coalition together. What Netanyahu wants to do is to kind of cement it, okay? Obviously, he wants this Gaza problem to go away, all right? Not because he has any problem with it, and I don't think Israelis have a whole lot of problem with it, but it's turned into a huge problem for Israel on a global scale. And he wants to keep Trump on board for Iran. That's what he's most concerned with.
Right.
Because, after 20 months, George, what has the world done to stop Israel's murderous rampage? Nothing.
No, well, it hasn't. Um, but Netanyahu has no means at his disposal to rid Gaza of the Palestinians.
By
They don't have it.
himself. By himself.
The United States isn't going to join in
With
that.
the United States?
No, the United States isn't going to join in that. It's not going to do it. Iran was
We'll
a
see.
different case. Iran was a different case because the United States could at least present, hey, that is a United States objective, a long-standing United States objective, which is that Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons. And Trump could say, well, I said it right from the beginning. I said it in 2015, Iran must not have nuclear weapons. So he can say this. He can't really say, oh, I said in 2015 that Gaza should be free of Palestinians. I mean, I don't think Netanyahu has any program beyond just making life as miserable as possible for the residents of
Okay,
Gaza.
so we're
No, but
agreeing.
that hasn't worked. The point is that these people, the people of Gaza, are not going to go away anywhere. You can destroy everything that there is in Gaza, which they're doing, but they simply refuse to go away. And therefore, the project of ridding Gaza of its population is doomed to fail because they say, well, we'll stay here. You know, you've turned this place into rubble. We will nonetheless stay
George,
here.
how long can a population exist without sustenance?
Well, that's yes. So they
I
can't.
mean, it just how much human endurance can you expect from a population? I mean, there's no place to live. Yeah, I mean, the Israelis are proud of the housing stock that they've destroyed.
Mhm.
Um, Depending on your news outlet or a news source here, I mean, none of the hospitals are operating other than first aid. Okay, I mean, we're talking bandages. Okay, maybe a cast once in a while. Um, how long can a population
Well,
live like
how
that?
long they seem to want to? They will continue to do it.
Well,
They
George,
go back and they
but
continue.
it's not a rhetorical question. You
But
can't.
yeah, but
A large population cannot live for, okay, another year of this? Yeah, then probably, yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, but it seems to me that what Netanyahu wants is to make sure Trump stays on board for Iran. That's very
right,
important because
right,
Israel is actually quite vulnerable. Okay, we found that
right,
out. Okay,
right.
it's vulnerable, and it's going to be how do we message about Gaza. Okay, where this is there's a free ticket for anybody that wants to leave. If you don't want to take it, then well,
You
we wash our hands.
can't leave if you've got nowhere to go. I mean, that's
Yeah, George. Okay, South Sudan,
there's
Libya.
no way. You know, they're not gonna. No one is
George, we're
going to
both
take 2 million
agreeing. We're
people.
both agreeing. This is not going to be solved. The suffering will
No,
continue.
the suffering will go on. I think that's the point. The suffering will continue
How you message the
for
suffering is the
for a long
problem.
time. Moreover, this is the you know, is that Hamas cannot be defeated. Israel has not defeated Hamas for the very obvious reason that the hatred for Israel just grows ever more intense. I mean, anybody who grows up, anyone who's alive and grows up, he is just, picks up a gun and learns how to use a gun against Israel. So there's just no way that you can ever destroy Hamas because then I think you would really have to destroy all Palestinians because the loathing. Can you imagine? I mean, the loathing that they have for Israel. So anybody who grows up has only one idea in his head: hey, I gotta fight Israel, because of what they did to my parents, what they did to my children. I mean, that's it. So there's just no way that Israel will ever be able to defeat Hamas. So essentially, Netanyahu has no program other than to continue with this. And then that raises the question of, well, what does Trump do? Does
Yeah.
Trump want to just go on in supporting this and endorsing this? Or maybe he does, but it's going to certainly cast a very bad, very dark shadow over his presidency.
Couldn't agree with you more. That's why I think Netanyahu's third trip is to make sure that he smothers Trump in the stench of all of this. Okay. Israel is not going to be alone committing the atrocities. It's with the United States of America. That's exactly what he wants. Okay. Does he trust the Europeans? Ah,
No, no,
okay.
no.
Okay, no, he's not going to look, he's not gonna, is he going to Brussels to make an appeal? No, of course not. The Europeans are the most worthless group of people on the planet right now. They've completely shot their legitimacy when it comes to international law and morality and everything else. But not Donald Trump. Not Donald. We're warriors together. We had the greatest victory in history. Oh God, it goes on and on and on. And that's right. Oh, you obliterated them, Don. But just in case, we're gonna have to bomb them again. Okay. I don't know what kind of head games he's gonna play with Trump, but Trump is gonna come out with on the losing end of all of this, and it's so patently obvious. Look, how are we going to solve the Gaza problem? How we, the pronoun again, how we going to solve it? Okay, that's right, Donald, because it's going to be your problem too. George, why doesn't he just say what he said earlier? Let's just take over the Gaza Strip, okay? This let the paratroopers come in. We'll take care of it for you. I would like that. I think it would be hugely costly and long term. Would Hamas shoot at American soldiers? I don't think they'd shoot at them if they were bringing aid. Okay, I think they'd be kind of reserved. And, like at least isn't the Israelis are starving us to death here. I mean, that's a weird scenario, but I mean, Donald Trump could win a Nobel Peace Prize for doing it.
Right, but he's not. He can't send in American military to start
I
removing
know, I know.
Palestinians, and then again, you still have this situation. No one's going to take them. They will not take the Palestinians, and therefore be in the front line of Israeli attacks in years to come, because nothing is settled. Even if you remove every single Palestinian, dump them in Egypt, dump them in Jordan, dump them in Sudan, dump them in Libya, all these Palestinians will do is immediately begin planning their war against Israel, which means that these countries are going to be subjected to continual attacks from Israel. No one's going to want to do that.
Well, and no one wants to do it because no one wants to be associated because that's a war crime. Okay, that's forced removal of. We don't want. No, no, no. You and the American, the Israelis and the Americans. That's what you're doing. We don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right.
And plus, George, I don't think as much sympathy as there is in the Arab world for the Palestinians. I don't. A lot of these countries are very poor. A lot of them are
Yes.
teetering and having hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people suddenly. You got to take
Oh,
care
man,
of.
there's
You
no
pay
way
for
they
it.
can. They don't have the means. I mean,
And I don't, and can you imagine, an average Palestinian, if such a person exists? Oh yeah, I'm going to feel free and safe in Libya. Libya, well, Libya?
no, no,
Come on.
no, it cannot be done. These are poor countries, and if they don't you remotely have the resources to look after even a few thousand refugees is a huge investment, in housing, in education, in healthcare. I mean, so there's a lot of money. And when you talk about hundreds of thousands, it's way completely beyond the resources. It's beyond the resources even of the wealthy Gulf states. Even if they were willing to cough up a lot of money, it's beyond their resources. Just how much would be needed to
Well,
rehouse and resettle hundreds of thousands of people.
take a look at a map, everyone. Use Google Maps. Look at the cyanide. Look at it closely. What's there? Not much. Not much.
Okay, okay, there's not much.
Is there any housing there?
There's
I
not.
mean,
So you're gonna have to exactly. Gonna
you know,
have to.
did
Yeah.
they have do they have bowling alleys and coffee shops?
No, no, no.
There's nothing there.
No, 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 no,
It's
no.
what it is a buffer zone for the Egyptians.
That's right. Yeah, okay, that's right. It's just that there isn't any resources there now. But then the question is, Iran is one thing, and there you see the United States has its own issues with Iran. It goes back, it has nothing to do with Israel, not entirely. It's the separate issue with Iran. It goes back to the overthrow of Pahlavi in 1979, the loss of Iran as an important U.S. strategic asset in the Gulf. The Americans are very upset about that, and so that's a long-standing grievance that the United States has about Iran, and therefore Trump can happily go along with Israel's plan. But even there, he limited himself. He absolutely limited himself to saying, okay, we're just going to deal with the nuclear issue. We're not going to deal with the regime change issue, at least so far. I mean, that may change.
Yep,
So
well,
far,
so far,
so
so far.
far, he has said we're not going
Well,
to.
but to get rid of all of that nuclear material, we have to have regime change. It's always going to go around.
It could happen with Trump. Very hard to discern a consistent line of thought. But that's now when it comes to Gaza, that's an wholly, solely Israeli issue. I mean, there's nothing in it for the United States. The United States has just nothing in it other than trying to
So,
keep Israel
so why
happy.
is Bibi going to go to talk to Trump about Gaza? See,
Well, why is he doing it? Well, because I mean, obviously it's been an embarrassment for the Americans for a while. Also, Americans are sending an awful lot of military hardware to Israel. And as Trump said the other day, as he was going on a plane, we need this military hardware ourselves. We're giving stuff to Ukraine, we're giving it to Israel. We're kind of running short. So that's one thing that obviously
well, to, to,
puts
to, to
America.
to accent that, George, I mean, a lot of the headlines are, the cutting off of aid or limiting aid to Ukraine. This is global,
Yep.
everyone.
Yep.
This is not just
Right.
about Israel and Ukraine. This is
Yep.
global. Other countries that are benefit from American arms, they also are getting given notice that things are going to slow down
Right.
and you might have to get in line. So this is a global thing. Thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you, Donald Trump, for continuing it. Okay.
Right, right. No, that's right. So then, if we're thinking, so, well, what does Trump? I have to think that when it comes to Gaza, Trump's attitude is not unlike his attitude to Ukraine. He just wants this to go away. He wants this is an
Yep.
embarrassment. This is a problem, and there doesn't seem to be any way that this is going to come to an end. So he's sort of interested in this. And hence, Netanyahu is coming, and so he said, "Well, what about this some negotiation?" But he doesn't have any. He hasn't figured out a way of bringing it to an end, which isn't, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out how you can do it. You put the pressure on Israel. And it's been fairly obvious. You can put the serious pressure on a country of 9 million. You can put serious pressure and say, bring this thing to an end. Trump wants it to go away, but he's not willing to do what's necessary to make it go away.
I look. For all we know, I mean, and coming from credible people that I follow, is that the briefing on the bombing of Iran came from the Mossad, not from American intelligence. John Kennedy, senator from Louisiana, I don't know if you've seen that clip. It's
I
floating
no,
around,
no.
and he was asked, and I think it was like CNN, which kind of surprised me. Some of the line of questioning from CNN. Was that American intelligence or Israeli? And he said, I don't know. You
Mhm.
don't know?
Right,
You're a senator.
right.
Okay. And I think the same thing is going to apply when it comes to Gaza. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up. Okay, BB, just wrap it up. Okay.
Of course, the problem that you have there is you said, well, we're going to wrap it up. And then you say, well, okay, you've had almost 2 years now in which to wrap it up. All the intelligence suggests there are as many Hamas members now as there were on
In the
October the
beginning.
7th. There
Yeah.
hasn't been any diminution in the membership of Hamas. So where is the theory of the case that you're somehow close to defeating Hamas? So you're not anywhere near close to defeating Hamas. So there's a lot of this propaganda that's put out in the media. Oh, Hamas has been defeated or whatever, but basically it hasn't been defeated. And if and if you have defeated Hamas, why do you keep bombing Gaza? I mean, if everything is so great and Hamas is on its last legs, why would you go on bombing and bombing and every
A,
day
a,
just killing more and more
a,
Palestinians
a 500-pound bomb on a
on a
cafe.
cafe, on an outdoor cafe? Yeah.
You heard there's credible reporting that when I was going to say Trump ceasefire, when the cessation of hostilities with Israel and Iran, that some Israeli jets returned and they still had their ordnance, so they were told to bomb, just drop it on Gaza, just drop it. What kind of strategy is that?
Right.
You know, the there's something, I think you and I discussed it. Everything seems to blend together these days. But Trump was going on about his foreign policy successes. Kosovo is one of them. George missed that one. Don't hold it
Yeah, the
against him.
Kosovo, that's
Okay?
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't hold it against George. Okay, he solved the Pakistan India. Oh, really? Oh, good. I didn't know. Okay. I mean, he's been told that you're on a roll. You're on a roll, Mr.
That's right.
President.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
and that way, and then Iran, yeah, check that one off. And now, all right, what's up next, boys? Gaza, all right, bring it on. I think that's what he's been deluded into this.
That's right. That's right. It's very interesting because when was it? A couple of days ago when he put out that truth saying, "Oh, Israel has agreed to the ceasefire," and then he put in, "So it's now up to Hamas to agree." And then all of his followers, all those Charlie Kirk, said, "Trump the peacemaker. Trump does it again. Superman. Super T. There's no agreement. He just makes this announcement saying Israel is here. That isn't the issue that Israel has agreed. I mean, it takes two parties to agree to a ceasefire. Just one party say, "Yeah, I agree on my terms." That's not a
On
deal.
my term, no,
That's right.
see, but that's the fly in the ointment because Trump and Putin had an hour-long call, and one of those rare moments that Trump just was he looked crushed. It was like, well. No progress there.
Right.
No, I don't have the Midas touch when it comes to the Russians. No, Mr. Trump, you don't have the Midas touch at all. Okay, at all.
No, no,
Okay,
no.
and it's one of those interesting things is that you would think because people are always bringing up who's got the leverage, who's got and because of the sanctions and a lot of other things that George and I've spent thousands of hours on, the Americans just don't have the leverage they have over the Russians, okay? They have enormous leverage over Israel if they wanted to apply it,
Right.
okay? And that's what makes this so painful to observe and experience because you know, I don't know. Do you think George Senior Bush would he flip the switch? He'd say no. Enough is enough here. Ronald Reagan when it when with Lebanon.
George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan, I think, would have applied that pressure.
I think so too.
They absolutely would have done it. Reagan did it over Lebanon. He said, I can't watch this on television anymore. I just can't watch what you're doing to Beirut anymore." And told, Begin, enough is enough. And George H.W. Bush, he did the same thing over the guarantees, the loan guarantees for building settlements. He said, "Nope, you're not getting this." But since then, presidents have been very reluctant. But even there was a moment even when George W. Bush applied
Yep.
some pressure against Israel, and it kind of led to that whole yet another one of those deals that never really came to anything. The Olmert plan, which was a kind of a updated version of the Camp David plan, but that as always didn't really get anywhere. But Trump, and I think this is very odd, is that he really doesn't need Israel any longer. He's not seeking re-election, but he seems the the most enthused about Netanyahu, the most excited about having this this person around him, and the least critical of what Israel is doing.
Again, George and I love to employ levity, but you know, it's more. It seems to be more psychological because when the initial strike on Iran was a spectacular success for the Israelis.
Right,
Spectacular. Okay.
right,
I mean, their wish list for the first 12 hours, they met and probably exceeded. Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to be objective about it. What kind of news reports are being funneled to Trump? He wants to be part of the action. It's a win. I want to
right.
be on the winning side. Bibi's winning. I want to win. And I think it's that kind of um, that moment in time is that this is the kind of stuff I want, okay? And I
Right,
think that may explain his enthusiasm. And then, again, whatever his handlers are telling him about obliterating and all, we don't know what he's being fed by whom,
right,
okay? And he may believe that he's on a spectacular role. And it's like, okay, we can take care of Gaza now,
right,
which that is, again, who is briefing him?
right,
His briefer should say, you want to get away from this as soon as you possibly can,
right,
okay?
right,
Because it doesn't bring anyone any good at all.
right. No, I agree, and I think that you know, this whatever they're negotiating, and they're obviously active negotiations now taking place with Egypt and Qatar and Hamas and so on. You're still going to get to the same problem as before. Hamas is not going to agree to essentially a deal on Israel's terms. I mean, maybe Trump thinks so that he's going to get a deal like that. There's not going to be a deal like that. Hamas is not going to do it. I mean, they already saw what happened at the time, that initial ceasefire deal, and that deal was specifically a three-phase agreement, and Israel walked back on it. This deal that Trump is talking about, for at least as far as when it's seen publicly, is just a one-phase deal. Well, Hamas isn't going to agree to a one-phase deal. Oh, we release the hostages, and then the very next day, Israel relaunches all of its the tanks and missiles and everything against us. I mean, that's just it cannot happen. So that's why the Trump, at this stage, he's may think, oh, I can get this great deal, and I'm going to wrong foot Hamas. That isn't going to work because it's obvious exactly what the sticking point is, that basically Hamas will not agree to anything short of a commitment by Israel to withdraw. And they've gone beyond that and says Trump has to guarantee this. Trump has to guarantee that Israel will not relaunch
How can
its
he do that,
base.
George?
I don't think
How
he
can
can.
he?
That's why I don't think this is
I
going to
just,
work. Yeah,
I just can't see in any world where that can work. No, going back to the shortage of ordnance, I mean, I really have to wonder where that is in the calculus because I'm sure he's been informed. You know how many bombs have been dropped on Gaza? American-made bombs? You know the number? And then you look how small that place is, a postage stamp. It's tiny.
yep,
And you've used all of that ordnance, and this is still happening? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose that's one way to get into his brain, cost benefit analysis of death.
right.
But I'm, is that part of his calculation? And the people that are telling him, this is this, we're throwing a lot of stuff at this, and we're not getting any outcome that is quote unquote desirable.
Right.
I wonder if that's something. I just can't see. You and I went through those two through social posts, which I'm just aghast at. Okay, how can he say no to Netanyahu now?
Right.
Or is that his public persona or that persona? I mean, how this man brain work is just it'll they'll have institutes in decades to come. Institute of Donald Trump's brain studies. Okay,
Right. It's very interesting that all this talk. Oh, we can't have Hamas. We can't possibly have Hamas having any kind of a presence in Gaza. Hamas is just terrorists, and you have people like Piers Morgan. Oh, we can't no, we can't have Hamas. But the fact was that back in 1982, at the time of Israel invasion of Lebanon, everyone was saying exactly the same thing about the PLO. They're terrorists. They're just murderers. We can't. But in fact, Ronald Reagan presided over the evacuation of the PLO, and he saved the PLO's lives. I mean, he did that. So I don't see the real problem to say, okay, you're not winning. You're not winning this war. You're destroying this, as you said, this tiny place. You're just destroying, killing women and children, but you're not winning the war. I mean, you're not defeating
Well, it's
Hamas. So
not.
therefore, you say, okay, why can't you have some kind of a presence of Hamas, just as eventually everyone accepted that you're going to have some kind of a presence of for the PLO?
It's not a war.
Yeah,
It's the destruction of the Palestinian people in Gaza. That's what, and what really it should shock the conscience is that after everything is done, it's a society I think that is limping along. It has vital signs, but as I said earlier, I mean, this is unsustainable. I mean, the the Trump Netanyahu meeting about Gaza, I think it's just for public relations. I have to seriously contemplate that there are Israeli officials thinking, how much longer can the society um, um, sustain itself? I mean, as far as a coherent body of people, because that's being weakened with every passing day. I'm sure I mean, I only watch a little bit of it. It's too heart-wrenching. Look, these, it looks like at a cattle farm for slaughter where they make people go through. That is really horrific and then some of these images that it just looks absolutely like the apocalypse. Um, if you don't eat and you don't drink, you're going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And I think that is the calculus, how to manage it. That's what Netanyahu wants, how to manage this, okay? Because these people are going to leave one way or another, okay? And I don't think he's indifferent in which way it is, okay? He just wants to make sure Trump is with him down this journey that he's on, okay? Because Netanyahu has the backing of the of Israeli society for this, okay?
well, that's what
Israeli
I'm not exactly sure that that's true. I mean, it seems like on Gaza there are divisions within Israeli society, not on
And
the
those
ground.
divisions, how have they played out? Okay, the policy hasn't changed at all. You have some politicians leave the government, policy doesn't change. They return to the government, policy doesn't change.
Right. Well, they returned to the government when the ceasefire ended. You remember when the ceasefire was agreed upon, then Ben-Gvir and Smotrich left. But for instance, I mean, the Israeli opposition leader, this Lapid, kind of vapid Lapid, he's pretty much saying that if there is a ceasefire, and if Ben-Gvir and Smotrich again walk out, we won't table any kind of a vote of no confidence against you. So that would indicate that they do want a ceasefire. So so you kind of wonder that there's a point at which everybody just gets exhausted by this. This is just simply draining, and as you said, I mean that Israel is just becoming really hated around the world. I mean, it's just you just can't get around this. There's no way to get it. You can have any number of documentaries about World War II and the Holocaust and so on. That isn't going to do the job. That isn't going to whitewash Israel. So you kind
That's
of
why Netanyahu needs to bear hug Trump.
right, right.
That's what he wants. He wants a very public. Of course, they'll sit in the Oval Office and Netanyahu will nod. He learned the Zelensky example. Don't disagree with him in public, okay? And he's going to compliment Trump, compliment him. That's exactly what he wants. And I just think he needs cover because at the end of the day, do you think Trump cares about Israel? Do you think he cares
No,
about Palestine? He doesn't care at all. He
no,
wants to win, he wants
right.
to control the news cycle, and he wants his Nobel Prize, and he wants his legacy. That's all he wants. I mean, he doesn't have an attention span other than that.
Well, I agree, but it also means that he's getting none of those things. I mean, I mean, talking about India and Pakistan, and no one even noticed his role in ending that very brief
George,
fire between India and Pakistan.
let's have a gentleman's bet right now. I'm going to bet that when they're in the Oval Office, what is Trump going to want to talk about? The big, beautiful bill. Because he's so stoked, and that's what he wants. Bibi, we did it. We did, and he'll use the we and all that. And of course, Netanyahu knows all of the arguments about the big, beautiful bill. He is a good student of American politics. He very much is,
He
okay?
knows a lot.
And
He
he's
does
just
know
going to
America.
massage him. You pulled it across the line. We're going to do it in the Middle East. That's right. We're going to do this. That's
Right, right. But you see, he's 6 months in, and if he's 6 months in, and Gaza just continues, and despite all of Trump's talk of ceasefire and bringing it to an end, it isn't coming to an end. And then, as he admitted the other day, by yesterday, his call with Putin really went nowhere. He's not getting anywhere with Ukraine. Then you can't just keep basking in India, this fiction of India, Pakistan, Serbia, Kosovo, and that actually goes back years and years, and Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which most people have no idea what a Rwanda is or what a Congo is. So that doesn't cut any ice very much. So and if this continues, this for all the talk, oh, ceasefire, ceasefire,
yeah,
ceasefire,
but
and there isn't any, that's got his poll numbers are going to start taking a hit.
or bomb Iran again. Change the
Okay,
subject.
that's possible.
Well, I
Um,
think it's likely. It's likely.
right.
Okay. I mean, everybody during the 12-day war, where was Gaza in the headlines?
Um,
Wasn't there. It was happening, but it didn't make a headline.
right.
Okay. And now Netanyahu knows this very clearly. Now this is back in the spotlight. And this Gaza humanitarian fund is turned into, or it's Orwellian. Again, it just it's unconscionable what they're doing. But Iran must never have a bomb.
No,
The precedent has been set.
right.
Oh,
That's right.
we have credible evidence. We know where the 400 kilos of uranium. We know where it is. We found it.
Right,
Okay.
right, right. Yep, that's right. I mean, that definitely something that could come up. But of course, the moment you do that and you launch another attack on Iran, that's kind of put bait to your claim that, well, that you've done that war is over. You did it. You're the peacemaker. Well, hey, I thought this was peace. There is no
Yeah, but we're not talking about Gaza. You see the quandary, everyone?
right, right,
George is right. That's the quandary.
right.
And it's actually talking about two things that most people are uncomfortable with or they're not interested in. And why is this? See, this is why it's a quandary for him because nothing is being resolved. Nothing.
All right.
It's being called a 12-day war, but it's technically, I suppose there's a truce or, there's a ceasefire. Then why are we calling it a war? The war is
There's a
ongoing.
ceasefire. Um, uh, and Iran has certainly said that they're not going to attack any American positions. They said, we've done what we did, and we're not going to attack any American positions. They didn't say that about Israel, but they said we're not going to attack any American positions. Well, no, here's a thought experiment. Now, is it completely beyond the bounds of possibility that when Bibi comes to Washington, Trump says to him, "Look, I'm sick to death of this thing in Gaza, and you got to wrap it up. There's a deal to be made here. We'll have this three-phase deal, and you got to do it. I mean, we just basically we don't have any hardware. We don't have the hardware to keep this war going in perpetuity. We just don't have it. We need our military hardware for ourselves, all our shells and missiles and so on. Can that happen?
I think it could happen, but then we would just have a repeat of breaking the ceasefire.
So it would just be so
And
that
we just go that cycle
no,
again.
but if there's a deal, if that was the deal is, and this is what Hamas is insisting on, that the deal has to be America guarantees. It has to be guaranteed by
Well, I
America
mean,
that basically Israel will not violate it after 60 days or after phase two or whatever. But that's only then would Hamas agree to this deal. So without that, I
well,
don't think there's any kind of a deal.
the argument we just don't have the ordinance. Well, you don't really need any more ordnance for Gaza. What you need to do, what the Israelis want, they just want if they can't be expelled, then they just wither on the vine, and that is an option that I think
No,
Netanyahu.
that's right. That's
I
absolutely.
mean, what else? What
No,
else is
no,
there to
that
bomb?
is an option, but he won't exercise that option if Trump says we're done. This has to end now, and you have to adhere to this plan. You have to adhere to this agreement, and that's it. You got to let in the humanitarian aid. You got to withdraw forces, and that's it. You're not making progress. You're not winning this war. I mean, and therefore, you can have another year, another 2 years. You're not going to win this war. And basically, we've had it. We're sick of this.
Yeah, I think he can say it, but I don't think it will move Netanyahu, the lobby.
Well,
Um,
it will
I
move.
mean, I get your point. I
Yeah,
get your
it
point.
will move Netanyahu if Trump throws his weight behind it. If he doesn't throw any weight behind it, then of course it's not going to happen.
It's possible, George, but do we have any evidence to show that that's a possibility during this term? And
No,
again, it's
no. I mean,
short.
and during those first just in those couple of days before he took office, when Steve Witkoff suddenly got very tough with Netanyahu and said, "I don't care about your stinking Shabbat. You come to meet me." And he said, "You got to sign this deal." And so, that was a day before he became president. So that's the only piece of evidence for that. But since then, yeah, since
Yeah,
then,
and then what happened after that?
yeah, exactly.
You raise a very important question. I think it's unanswerable at this time because I would agree with you that Trump has the chance to put this to bed as far as he is concerned. Okay, does he have the wherewithal and the stamina, the attention span to just say, "Look, BB, we've gone to
Yeah,
heaven and hell for you." But it has limits, and the litmus test right now is you've got to end this thing.
you're right.
Okay. You had 21 months to pull it off. You didn't do it with all of our help.
Right,
Okay. And we took a lot of shit for you.
right,
Okay. That's again, are we victims of the fallacy of common
right.
sense? Because George and I are giving common sense observations here, but it never seems to work with this guy. Okay.
No, no, no. It doesn't. And um, but then if he doesn't do that, if he just essentially just simply signs on to BB's plan, which and he's not gonna succeeding. BB hasn't got a plan to succeed. I mean, everyone accepts it. He has no plan to succeed. I mean, that just nothing. I mean, he has no idea other than to continue doing what he's doing, and he's not succeeding. So if that happens, what does Trump gain? I mean, what does Trump gain by this thing just continuing on and on and on? I mean, then that's what puzzles me. I mean, if he doesn't get tough with Netanyahu, what does Trump gain by that?
He has, there's no, I mean, again, applying common sense, geopolitical interest, there are obvious options here. But I don't think those things are in play right now. I think it's all messaging, um, um, uh, 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 an exercise in trying to reframe what's going on, and that will give Netanyahu cover. Well, I don't see how Trump wins in any of this because this has to stop. It's so bad it has to stop. Well, how bad is it? Okay, I mean, people are going to start asking questions about, well, why did it take you so long? And what happened to Biden's peer? What's going on with American contractors? What are American contractors doing in Gaza, for God's sake? I mean, it starts. There's so many questions that could be asked. They're all very uncomfortable, as they should be.
Right.
Okay, but Trump had his moment, and I say this in all seriousness. He was president before.
Right.
It wasn't like, JFK, he lands in the White House and the Bay of Pigs happens and it's
Right.
like, whoa, whoa, I'm over. I didn't order that. I mean, what's that? I just got here. I just sat
Right.
down.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because he was very inexperienced. He
Right.
didn't know what he was up against. And We know
Right.
what happened to him. Okay. But Donald Trump, he knows BB. He knows the
Right.
Israelis.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And what he should have done when he came in is just said, no, you will stick to this.
Right.
Okay. And Witkoff is going to live in your house.
Right.
Okay. And I'm going to get an hourly update of what's going on. You're not going to wiggle out of this one. You did this with me on Soleimani. You're not going to let me, I'm not going to let you do it again. And I'm still pissed off about Arizona.
No, I think that's right. I think that that's what is so curious because when he started and that when he put his foot down with Netanyahu the day before he became president, he says, "Hey, Trump is now going to this is going to be a different administration. He's not going to make the same mistakes that he made during his first term." Um, and even he did something similar in Ukraine. He cut off assistance to Ukraine in the first few days of his administration. So it looked like he's going to, take seriously the weaknesses that he demonstrated. But what's happening now is that he's essentially just drifting along. I mean, he's just going along as he did during his first term. I mean, it now seems to be doing the exact same thing. He talks about peace and bringing to an end, but you're not going to get peace unless you actually deliver. You actually apply your own, the strength, the power, the influence of the United States and coercion. And you have the means to coerce other countries, particularly Israel, particularly Ukraine. Unless you're willing to do that, you're not going to get anywhere. Just simply making declarations. Hey, I'm the peace president. And Charlie Kirk then saying, "Oh, he's the peace president." Matt Gates, "Oh, he's the peace president." That isn't going to
Yeah,
get you.
but toward that, but by the beginning of the next news cycle, it'll be Taco Trump.
Right. That, yeah.
That's what's going to happen
Right.
because and plus the big beautiful bill. Okay, he is in seventh heaven right now. Okay, because everybody keep in mind that's the last major legislative victory Trump is going to have.
Right. That's his big
He's
signature.
done.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's his signature because it touched everything. Will everything turn to shit as a result? I don't know. A lot of people think. Okay,
Right.
but that's it.
Right.
He's crap. He's at a
Right.
highest point right now.
Exactly. But none of that is very special because every incoming president, particularly if he has both houses of Congress, is going to get his tax and budget bill through. Everyone. Bill Clinton did that. Obama did it. Biden did it. If you control both houses of Congress, the president, particularly the newly incumbent president, he's going to get his budget and tax bill through. What happens then, of course, is a different question because just about all of them, all of Clinton, Obama, Biden, then lost in the midterms. So that big bill that they
That's
put,
why I'm saying it.
yeah,
That's why I'm
absolutely,
saying it.
it could absolutely happen to him. Um, and so that's why it would be advantageous to him to then be the foreign policy president, the one who brings these conflicts to an end. But it's not really, it isn't happening. And then you go back to this ceasefire that he had. He had that ceasefire and then tossed it away. So he had it in January the 19th. He had that ceasefire, and then March it gets tossed away. So he's now trying to scramble back to where he was
It, it,
up until March.
what we're going to have is that I think that there are certainly people around him realizing, damn, we should have got that ceasefire, continued that. Because you know what? The Ukrainians are thinking the same thing. Wow, Istanbul, that was a pretty sweet deal.
Right.
That was pretty sweet for us, okay? And people, even it'll probably dawn on Trump is that, the Trump
Right.
ceasefire, you know, that's the last time you put your fingerprints
Right.
on it and you
Right.
let it slip through your fingers,
Right.
okay? And there's a precedent. It'll slip through your fingers again,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And I keep stressing when you feel you're losing ground on one, you're going to throttle the next one. So it could be Taco Trump by Wednesday of next week, and then we have, but Iran must not never have a bomb. And you know what? That's not what I think anyway. I don't think that's what Trump wanted his presidency to
No,
be.
I really don't. And I mean, let's say, Netanyahu comes there on Monday and then they have their joint presser and they're going to denounce Hamas, Hamas this, Hamas that. The problem is that that isn't cutting any more ice because basically no one's defending Hamas. I mean, there are no supporters, followers of Hamas, so therefore no one's even
Yeah,
interested.
there is not a Hamas lobby in
There isn't a
Washington.
Hamas lobby, and no one's interested. And so, therefore, the hatred and contempt that is directed now at Israel has nothing whatever to do with any kind of sympathy with Hamas or anywhere. So, therefore, there's no point in attacking Hamas. I mean, no one, where's Hamas? You bomb a cafe, you kill women and children in a cafe. Where's Hamas? What does any of that got to do with Hamas? And so therefore, if they do that, if that's what they're going to do, in the Oval Office, they're just going to keep talking about Hamas. That isn't going to cut any ice. And so I think there's going to be expectation when he comes on Monday. There's going to be an expectation. Hey, are we ready to sign this ceasefire deal? Because there's a lot of talk about it, a lot of excitement, and if as I think is likely, and I think we're in agreement there, I don't think it's going to happen. There's going to be disappointed expectations, and the disappointment isn't going to be alleviated by yet more denunciations of Hamas.
Well, I mean, what we're going to probably see is the Istanbul 2.0. Something's happening here.
Right.
The two sides are meeting. Trump forced the two sides together. Okay, he loves that narrative. Okay, well, it fizzled out. Oh, the talks in Oman. Okay, oh, we were close to an agreement and all. Do you see a pattern here, George?
He's always done that. We were close to an agreement. Of course, remember he did that during his first term. He always said, I was this close to working out a new agreement, a nuclear agreement with Iran during my first term. Iran was on the brink of signing a
And
deal.
North Korea.
That's it. They were absolutely on the brink. If that
Close.
election hadn't been stolen, they would have signed the deal. That's right. That's the classic Trump. Always this close. But of course, it was never
And
any.
you never use that terminology in real estate, Mr. President. Either the deal went through or it didn't. Okay. Nobody cares. We were almost. Nobody
Nobody
cares.
cares. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Nobody cares. However many meetings you may have, until you sign on the line that is dotted, you don't have a deal. That's all. That's all. That only when you sign on the line that is dotted that is there a deal. So that you're absolutely right. That it doesn't work in real estate. Definitely doesn't work in the world of international relations. So I think I think it's expectations. The guy, David Ignatius in the Washington Post, the voice of the CIA, he's wheeling out the new talking point, and it's not a new talking, but it's an old talking point, which is we're on the brink. Yes, what are we on the brink of? We're on the brink of a new Middle East. Uh-uh. With Iran gone, Hamas gone, Hezbollah gone, we're on the brink of a new Middle East. And saying, I seem to remember we had that line during the Bush years.
And
I'm
her
sure
name,
I
and her
remember that
name,
we're on the brink of a
and
new
her
Middle
name
East.
was, and her name was
Condi Rice,
Condi Rice.
Condi Rice,
The birth pangs
the birth
of
pangs
the
of a new.
Middle East.
That's right. And there is Ignatius, trotting out that hoary old
Yeah, well, Ignatius, again, these ridiculous talking points. Israel is vulnerable. We saw that.
right.
George and I have never seen that in our life. They're far more vulnerable now than they were in 73.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right,
Because that was a conventional ground
right,
war,
right.
okay, and very close quarter airspace, okay. Israel is very vulnerable. It has completely botched the Gaza operation. Okay, Syria's been taking care of Hezbollah. Well, yes and no. Okay, they're not a major irritant for the time being. But when you shatter states to your north and into your west, or east. Having a shattered state is not always a good situation to
No,
have. Okay,
no.
they're both evolving right now. Israel is in the most vulnerable position that it has ever been since its inception. Okay, there's a lot of things rolling against it, and that's why Netanyahu needs to bear hug Trump to pull him out of this. Okay, and again, going back to the ordnance issue, George, did you know that 20% of the entire American THAAD arsenal was used up in 12 days?
Right. Yep.
20% of the this is supposed to be the best. I mean, the Pentagon always goes for quality because it's more expensive. Okay,
Right.
how many more THAAD missiles or systems? From what I understand, it takes like 100 guys to run one of those systems. It's really quite
Mm,
elaborate operation.
right.
Um, Israel needs to recapitalize its military.
Right.
Um,
Right. That
Trump's
I mean,
being,
no,
I
I
mean,
mean
there's a whole range of issues here.
that's right. That's why it would seem to me to make sense that Trump is going to tell Netanyahu, you have to wrap it up. This can't go on. This is you're going through an awful lot of hardware. We don't have any more hardware to spare, and therefore you got to wrap it up now. You can start it again in, I don't know, in 5 years' time, but right now you need to wrap it up. And that I mean that would be the rational. I'm not saying that's going to happen. That would be the rational response of a U.S. president. He was saying, you're not on the brink of winning. You're not gonna, you're not defeating Hamas, and you're using up an awful lot of American hardware. We don't have any more to spare, so
How,
therefore
how is,
wrap it up.
I, I'm not disagreeing with you, but it's a point of order here. Does the Trump administration order unfettered aid back into Gaza? I don't think anyone in Israel will let that happen.
Well, I mean that then it has to be the question is was that you have to sign any deal, any agreement that is signed, which is what all the negotiations about. Any agreement is absolutely an essential part of any agreement, which is, yeah, aid, unrestricted, unfettered flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. I mean,
Well,
without that, I don't know how you
oh
can have
yeah,
an agreement.
absolutely. So I mean, so Israel choked, yelled "Uncle" after 12 days of exchanging missile fire with Iran, and now you were defeated by Hamas in Gaza. That's not gonna cut ice. No way.
It, it, it,
Again, this is the
it's,
quandary.
well, yes, but you see, Israel doesn't really see that they were defeated by Iran. I don't think that's the perception.
Well, I think
Right.
the population. No, I don't. I agree with you, but I think there are thinking people that realize that
Right. That was
they
that.
bit into something they couldn't
Right.
digest.
That's right. Um, but within Israel, though, I mean, when it comes to Gaza, and particularly on the issue of the hostages, you have to think that there's a public that just says that this has to stop. This can't go on.
Why now? I mean, this whole Hannibal doctrine and all of that. It just, I mean, that's widely talked about in Israel. I mean, obviously, if you have a loved one that's being held hostage or their body being held, that's obviously the top priority, obviously. But it hasn't moved the government at all. At all.
No, it isn't. It's a very unpopular government, and they stay in power because of a war, and it's perceived that that's why they stay in power, because of the war. Because the moment this war were to come to an end, this government would fall. So that's also seen within the by the public. I mean, Trump, who intervened in Israeli politics with the legal process, and says you got to postpone the hearing for Bibi, and the hearing was postponed. I'm kind of busy, I'm fighting a war here. I'm sorry, I don't have the time to show up in court, and the judges say, all right, well, if you don't have the time, you don't have the time. Because so they know that the moment it's over, he is going to have to show up in court, and his government falls, and there will be all kinds of inquiries about everything,
You
about
know,
October the
what
7th
what
and whatnot.
what depresses me, ahead of this Monday meeting is that even though this administration is still relatively young, they have never once demonstrated they have a strategy.
No,
Okay.
I agree.
And
Right.
that is truly depressing
Yeah.
because we saw, look, like a few other people in this space, George and I probably logged thousands of hours on Ukraine. Okay. And while we have had our differences, I think we broadly have been able to present a way out for everyone. Okay. And we don't hold it as a secret. Other people talk about, John Mearsheimer talks about it, Max Blumenthal, Glenn Greenwald. I mean, if we were all around the table, we would more or less have a pretty good idea how to get this thing done, end it, okay? That kind of thinking has not entered the mainstream, and it
Right.
doesn't come out of this White House. Steve Witkoff would probably stare at us like a deer in a headlight, like, what are you talking about? No strategy at
Yeah.
all. It's managing the news cycle. That's all I see.
Right. Right. No,
That's bad news.
right. Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's the thing, and of course, that's what prevents Trump from being a peacemaker. You can't be a peacemaker if you don't have any strategy, any idea of what would constitute peace. Now, this talk about the ceasefire, this three-phase ceasefire, that will bring a ceasefire. I mean, of course, it doesn't solve Israel's long-term problems, but Israel cannot solve its long-term problem because it hasn't solved the Palestinian problems. And that's an ongoing thing. It's been going on for
Well,
84 years.
George,
But basically, if you haven't solved that problem, then you haven't solved your overall problem. And therefore,
and
but the best you can do is you have a ceasefire. And I think if you have a ceasefire, at least there's not going to be any fighting and killing for a while. I mean, Gaza has to be reconstructed.
and the only time hostages, alive or not, have been released is during ceasefires.
Right.
Okay? I mean, that's something, two dots you can connect. Okay? The initial one in October, and then we
Right.
had Trump's reentry into the Oval Office. So, yeah, but everybody knows Hamas is not going to give up its leverage because
Okay.
if they do, that's when they pull in the bulldozers and they just push everybody into
Right.
all the rubble and the people into the sea, and no one's going to stop them.
But
No one.
yeah, no, I agree, but that's why I think that the idea of stipulating as a condition, well, no Hamas presence at all, I think it's just absurd. There's going to be Hamas presence. I mean, there's no Gaza authority, there's no Gaza government administration without Hamas. I
Oh,
mean, it's
why is that, George? Why is that? Oh, because there are no post offices
right.
anymore.
Yeah,
There's no health ministry anymore. There are no hospitals anymore. There are no schools anymore. There are no more mosques. They're all gone. Okay, you had a functioning or semi-functioning statelet when this all started. Now you have nothing.
no,
You just have misery.
that's right. That's right. But that's why, Netanyahu's objectives are ridiculous. To say, oh, we're going to have a Hamas-free Gaza, then we're not going to settle for anything other than a Hamas-free Gaza. Well, that isn't going to happen.
Well, George,
Cannot happen.
okay, parenthetically, George, let's just say, in fantasy world, let's say Hamas says, yeah, we're done. Put us on some school buses, take us to the Sinai. Nothing will have changed.
Right, right,
You're fighting, you're destroying a population. You're not fighting Hamas. That's a fiction. That's the fig leaf. We
right.
can't deal with them. No, you don't want to deal with the Palestinian question. That's what you don't want to do.
Well,
And
that's
don't
right.
stop talking about Hamas with me.
That's right. And that's really the problem, which is, of course, um, once this does, the ceasefire or whatever, then people as they grow up, they're going to want revenge. I mean, that's just, it's just no, you're not going to get around that. The people are going to want revenge. Hey, these people, these Israelis, they killed my parents. They killed my brothers and sisters. So what am I going to do? I'm going to say, well, I don't care about any of that. I'm going to go become an engineer, or I'm going to become a doctor. I don't care about. That's not the way humans operate. That's it. You kill someone's parents, you kill someone's children. They're going to want revenge, and that's why Israel just ultimately has really no hope of any kind of a peace without addressing this problem. So it's a fantasy world. Oh, we're just going to get rid of Hamas. You're not going to get that. That isn't going to address your problem. First of all, you can't get rid of Hamas. Hamas is they run the place. Um, but even if you kill this leader or that leader, you have a population that absolutely hates you, that wants to kill you. Nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It's nothing to do with wanting to kill the Jews. They want to kill the people who killed their parents and their children.
And who are doing it?
Right,
Israelis.
right, right.
Now, that's like Piers Morgan talk, you know. They're anti-Semitic. No, they're anti-Israeli.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
The people that are killing them, they don't really care about their creed. Okay. Max Blumenthal, he's been to Gaza a number of times. He told me that there was no hostility to him as a person. They all know he's Jewish. I mean, there wasn't any hostility towards him. Okay.
Right.
Because he's not bombing them.
That's
Okay.
right. Exactly. Exactly. That's
Yeah, just a few threads here. I really want to get to the bottom of those Truth Social posts. Okay, George and I did a whole podcast on it. Just bewildering. Why would Trump has never expended political capital on someone else like that? Never, except for himself. Okay.
that's right. And I have to say, and it's something that didn't occur to me until somebody tweeted this out. Isn't it strange how Trump seems to be driven by this insane hatred for Thomas Massey? What is that about? I mean, after all, Thomas Massey, is a bit difficult to deal with in Congress. I mean, he's a bit obstreperous, but
He's a he's a very quirky guy.
he's a
Really.
quirky guy, but he's part of the Trump coalition. He's a libertarian, anti-government figure, part of the Trump coalition. Yet Trump seems to be just obsessed with him. And then you think, could it be perhaps something that AIPAC really, really hates him, and AIPAC has actually targeted him in the past, and that's the reason for Trump's absolute obsessive hatred for Massey. I hadn't thought of that until I read this. So maybe
Yeah,
that's some truth to that.
but that's a dysfunctional expression of power. Punching down. Hmm.
Right, but why him? You see, that's the thing that
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Well, no,
that's
because
the reason. I
but
don't
he
know if
puts
that's
it.
true, but Massey is famous for pointing out the influence of AIPAC and says that they own Congress. I mean, he just said it. They own it. Every single new member of Congress has an AIPAC minder. He talked about the minders. So he's someone who's been targeted by AIPAC, and that otherwise, this hatred for Massey doesn't seem rational.
I think it's perfectly plausible and probably even likely. But also, parallel to that, Trump wants absolute submission. He does not recognize differences. Oh, we can agree to disagree. No, he's not that kind of guy. Either you're with me or you're against me, and if you're against me, you're an enemy. Okay? That's really primitive political
Right,
thinking.
but
I
if
mean, if you look at Nixon, Nixon always hugged his
right, but
rivals.
Nick
He
Trump,
always kept them really
right,
close.
right, but Trump has done that as well. I mean, look, well, Marco Rubio is his Secretary of State. Remember how bitter the
Yeah, but
relations were
Marco is under his
under
thumb.
his thumb. Okay, and then same with Lindsey Graham. That a very bitter 2016 campaign, really nasty
Yeah,
how
but I mean,
people.
also, Daniel McAdams told me this yesterday on my program. He said, "But what power does Marco Rubio have?
No, it doesn't have any.
Has no power."
I,
Could you imagine? I mean, George, and we go way back. I mean, James Baker, he was
right,
he didn't have a separate power base,
right,
but he was given a lot of room to express his visions. Okay,
right.
not opposed to his boss, But I mean, when he walked around Washington and global capital, he was listened to because this guy, this guy's got influence.
Right,
Okay.
he was a very powerful figure. He was always very close to Bush. He was a Bush man, but then Reagan took him over, and Reagan really liked him. I mean, that was a big thing. He took him over. He was first his White House chief of staff, and then he became his Treasury secretary. And that was somebody who's a Bush person. And then of course, when Reagan turned it to Bush, then of course Baker got the Secretary of State thing. But Baker wouldn't have got it unless he was somebody who was held in very high esteem. I don't think anyone holds Marco Rubio in high esteem. So but the point is that Trump has shown himself to be, that he can work with, even Rand Paul. Rand Paul is quite, he's his own man, but Trump doesn't seem to fulminate against Rand Paul in the way he does with
That's
Thomas
a really
Massie.
good. That's a really good point. I mean, and I think Trump recognizes Rand Paul as in a very specific category, and he's
Right,
a certain brand too.
right,
And he's very. He may not be loved by the Republican base. I'm not saying MAGA. I'm saying Republican base, but he has an enormous amount of respect
right,
from them.
right, yeah, yeah,
And so probably, and because Rand Paul is not a threat to him,
right.
okay. But Massey, he calls balls and strikes, and that's something that Trump does not
That's not,
like.
it doesn't. So, um, right, but at the same time, if you go issue by issue by issue, you think this is pretty Trumpian. He's a non-interventionist. He's against big government. He was against all the COVID restrictions, and he opposed Trump. In 2020, when Trump was doing his huge COVID reflation bill, which costing how many trillions. Massey was against that, said, "Hey, this is going to be inflationary." So if you look him on issue after issue, you say this is pretty solid MAGA
He's more Trump than
person.
Trump.
Yeah,
He's more
exactly.
Trump than Trump.
That's right. That's right. So this hatred just doesn't seem to have any real kind of
I think
basis for it.
his political horse sense is probably loving it, and I'm talking about Massey because Massey's been elevated. I mean, how many levels? I mean, really? All right. I mean, he's a and he is the quintessential American underdog, which people like.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's right on a lot of
He's
things.
right.
Not every,
Exactly.
but
He's
he's
right.
right on a lot of things.
And what also,
And and
yeah,
he used that phrase that everybody's tossing around. Is that what you voted for? Well, they voted for his vision.
that's right. He's very much a First Amendment person, free speech and so on, more so than Trump is, incidentally. He's a Second Amendment person, big kind of gun rights person. So he's a man of principle. Also, what's going to work in his favor is that his wife died recently. His wife was a kind of childhood sweetheart. They've been pretty much you know, girlfriend and married for many years, and so there's going to be a lot of sympathy for him. So that's not going to work well, when you primary him and everything, and then and people have a lot of sympathy, like this childhood sweetheart, his wife, died recently. So I think Trump's going to burn his fingers on this. I think Massey will be reelected.
Oh, absolutely. It's because of all of this that it ensures his victory, unless the lobby can find stuff on him. He's probably pretty squeaky clean.
I think so too. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't. He looks a regular guy. And there's nothing on him. Yeah.
Well, got to put a bow on it here. This is Friday. Of course, George and I will talk about this again on Sunday. Maybe David Ignatius will give us a few more Easter eggs
Yes.
to ponder.
A new
Okay.
Middle East. Wow. I've never heard that. And, I think we're the dawn of a new Middle East.
Yeah. And one has to wonder what is America first about this.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the big beautiful bill thing, I think that's going to have a very short half-life. You can't write on that, okay?
No, no,
I
no.
mean, I've heard a lot of criticism of it. I don't want to go into it right now. Trump got it through. That's what presidents are supposed to do. Okay, everyone. If you agree with it or you don't
Right,
agree with
right,
it,
right.
you get your big mega bill. This is your signature legislation because he's probably not going to get any
Well,
another
that's it. And
of
look,
this magnitude. No,
yeah.
and who knows? The dissenters within the Republican Party say, "Look, I'll go with you on this one, but we're not doing this again. We're not
No,
going to
but
do this
listen,
again."
nobody knows the economic effects of this. Anyone who claims who knows, or if you do, you cut taxes here and then, you know, cut back on this program or that program, what the net economic effect is. No one really knows about that. But this is July the 4th. So by, next summer, when the midterm are really going to start getting hot and interesting, this will be long forgotten. This is your signature bill. All presidents get that through, and particularly presidents who have a majority in both houses. And if you get, you got to get it through, and he's done that. And I mean, what is very peculiar is that I thought, and a lot of people thought they weren't going to do these big bills anymore. I thought that what felled Kevin McCarthy when Matt Gaetz says we're not doing these 1,500-page monstrosities anymore. We have separate bills for everything. This topic, this topic. Let's not just shove everything into one big bill. But that's exactly what Trump has done. So then you say, well, where's the change? Though that basically you can't just dump a whole lot of different things into one bill, and no one has the chance of studying each particular issue. But you have to vote for the whole thing, because if you don't vote for the whole thing, then you're not going to get what you want. So then you have to vote for all sorts of things that you don't want, and that's exactly what Trump was going to move away from. But apparently
And he
that
said
hasn't
no more
happened.
omnibuses.
That's it,
Remember?
exactly. No more of these 1,500-page monstrosities, but we're back with the 1,500-page monstrosities.
All the more so. This is Friday. Trump got what he wants.
Right.
Okay. George is right. By a year from now, we'll maybe pass judgment one way or another. But Monday's coming up.
That,
Okay. And he's saddled himself. I'm going to solve it in one day. I'll be even before I'm president.
right,
Okay.
right,
Um, you know, I obliterated their nuclear program, and all of these things come back.
right.
Okay. Because Donald Trump, you haven't resolved any of these
Yes,
things.
that's
And
right.
the longer they're unresolved, the more they're going to eat away at your presidency.
That's right. That's right.
All right. All right. We did have scheduled a special guest, but it didn't work out. Hopefully, we'll do it again next
Next week,
week.
next
That's
Friday.
why George has not forensically prepared for
Yes,
this.
no, that's right.
Okay.
This is much more
Okay.
of an ad hoc,
This was an
spontaneous conversation.
we decided to talk about what we talked about at the as we were doing it. Okay, so that's it for our Friday mini wrap. I think we can call it that. We're going to get back together on Sunday, a little bit more of the same, and then because of the time differences, maybe we'll talk about the visit on Monday because of the
Exactly.
time.
That's right. That's right. Yep. So the dogs, the situation with the dogs is always very problematic because they're getting angrier and angrier. They're insisting that they're doing basically backbreaking work, unrewarded, unremunerated, unappreciated, and they're demanding restitution. And so as with these angry dogs, they need to hear clinking of coins in the tip jar, and the sound of dollar bills being stuffed into the. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, we might get the dogs into a better mood one of these days. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.